Tonight, we are going to discover where the title Son of Man was written before the Gospels existed, in the pages of 1 Enoch, in a section called the Book of Parables, preserved only in Ethiopia, only in Ge'ez, a pre-existent figure seated on a throne of glory, named before the sun and the stars were created. Breathe with me. We are going there together. Close your eyes. You are standing at the edge of the Dead Sea, in the valley below Qumran. The cliffs rise above you in the darkness, every cave silent. Somewhere in those cliffs, 2,000 years ago, the scrolls were sealed in clay jars. Every section of Enoch was found in those caves. The Watchers, the journey through heaven, the 4 chambers of the dead. Every section except one. The Book of Parables was not there, and the only place it survived was across an ancient sea in the Highlands of Ethiopia, in the hands of monks who never stopped reading it. For years, I have walked with people through their darkest nights. People who came to me not with questions about theology, but with a quieter ache, the feeling of being overlooked, of carrying something real, something significant, in a world that moves too fast to notice. And tonight's text, friend, speaks to that ache more directly than almost anything else I have ever studied, because tonight we open the Book of Parables, the hidden heart of 1 Enoch, chapters 37 through 71. And in these pages, we discover a figure who was named before the sun existed, a figure called the Elect One, the Son of Man. And we discover why only Ethiopia kept these words alive for 2,000 years. Before we continue, friend, if this ancient voice is bringing peace to your night, a quiet subscribe means that tomorrow night and the night after, this rest will still be here. You don't need to move. Just a thought. When did you last feel truly still? Now, let's go deeper. There is a puzzle at the heart of modern biblical scholarship that has never been fully resolved, and I want to share it with you tonight, friend, because it is the puzzle that makes tonight's text so uniquely precious. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered between 1947 and 1956 in the 11 caves at Qumran near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, scholars found fragments of nearly every book of the Hebrew Bible and fragments of many of the texts that Western Christianity eventually excluded from its canon. Among those excluded texts, the most frequently copied was 1 Enoch, the same book that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has carried in its 8-1 book canon for over 1,600 years. Scholars found fragments of every major section of 1 Enoch. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, they found the Book of the Watchers, chapters 1 through 36, the story of the 200 watchers who descended to Mount Hermon, the tale of Exile and his curriculum of weapons and cosmetics, the journey of Enoch through the chambers where souls wait for the final judgment. They found the astronomical book chapters 72 through 82, the ancient Ethiopian calendar of the sun and moon that differs from the calendar accepted by Rome. They found the dream visions, chapters 83 through 90, the remarkable symbolic history of Israel told through the imagery of animals and stars, they found the Epistle of Enoch, chapters 91 through 107, a collection of wisdom sayings and woes delivered to the righteous in the last days. And among the scrolls at Qumran there were also fragments of the Book of Giants, the expanded tale of the Nephilim that we explored in our last gathering. Every major section of 1 Enoch was represented, except one, the Book of Parables, also called the Similitudes of Enoch, chapters 37 through 71 of 1 Enoch. Not a single fragment of the Book of Parables was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Not one verse, not one phrase, not one line. Now, this might seem like a small textual detail, a footnote in an academic paper, but I want you to understand what it actually means. The Qumran community copied Enoch obsessively. They preserved it with reverence. They treated it as scripture, and yet they either did not have the Book of Parables, or they chose not to copy it, or, and this is the theory that many scholars find most compelling, the Book of Parables was written after the Qumran community sealed its library in those caves. The scholarly consensus formed across decades of careful analysis by figures like George Nicholsberg, James Vanderkam, and Michael Knibb, 3 of the most respected voices in Second Temple Jewish studies, is that the Book of Parables was composed somewhere between 100 BCE and 50 CE, possibly contemporary with the life of Jesus, possibly slightly after, and it was carried not to the caves of Qumran, but south, across the desert, along the trade routes that connected the ancient world to the Horn of Africa, into the hands of the community that would one day become the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. The Gez phrase used to describe the preserved manuscripts of the Book of Parables at the monastery of Tana Haik, one of Ethiopia's oldest monastic communities, founded in the 7th century on an island in the Haik Lake of the Amhara region, is Meshhaf Kedos Enoch. In Gaze, Meshhaf Kedos means sacred book or holy writing. For over 1,000 years, the monks of Tana Haik hand-copied this manuscript in complete isolation from the European and Near Eastern scholarship that would eventually declare these chapters deuterocanonical or apocryphal. And tonight, as you rest with this voice, you are receiving wisdom that was kept alive by a community that never lost faith in its holiness, even when the rest of the world had forgotten it existed. The monastery of Tana Haik, Aiku Estefanos, sits on an island in Lake Haikyu in the Amhara region of Ethiopia. It is dedicated to Saint Stephanos, and its library holds one of the most complete collections of Ge'ez manuscripts. Still in monastic hands, these are not digitized documents in a university database. These are physical scrolls, parchment manuscripts, copied in Ge'ez script by monks, whose names we will never know, who sat in the lamplight of a stone chamber and pressed ink into vellum so that the words of Enoch would survive another generation. The specific section they preserved with such care, the Book of Parables, is the section that contains the most remarkable Christological content in all of Second Temple Jewish literature, the section that names in precise, explicit detail a pre-existent divine figure seated on the throne of heaven, called the Elect One, called the Son of Man, a figure who existed before creation, before the sun, before the stars, before time itself was set in motion. In just a moment, we reach the specific verse in 1 Enoch chapter 46, where Enoch stands before the Ancient of Days and sees this figure for the first time. The description he gives, his exact words, will either take your breath away or give you rest. Stay with me. This is why the book of parables matters, friend. Not because it is a theological curiosity, not because it satisfies an academic appetite for ancient manuscripts, but because it preserves in words older than the Gospels the very title that Jesus of Nazareth used to describe himself in the Synoptic Gospels over 80 times, Son of Man. And in 1 Enoch's book of parables, we discover where that title was first given, what it meant, and why the one who used it may have known exactly what he was claiming when he said it. Did you catch that? The book of parables, the only section of Enoch missing from the Dead Sea Scrolls, contains the very title Jesus used most often for himself. Beautiful, isn't it? Walda Sab. Let me say that again. Walda Sab. In Gez, the ancient liturgical language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the language in which the complete text of 1 Enoch has been preserved for 2,000 years. Walda Sab means son of man. Walda meaning son of or child of, from the root walada, to beget, to bear, to bring forth. Besi meaning man or human being, from the root that gives us the word for person, for the embodied creature, for the one made of earth and breath together. Walda Sab, son of man, the child born of human substance. Now, in the Hebrew scriptures that you may know from Sunday school or childhood or long years of study, the phrase Son of Man, Ben Adam in Hebrew, appears in two very different registers. In the Psalms and in the book of Ezekiel, Son of Man is simply a way of saying, you, the mortal one, you, the creature made of earth. God addresses Ezekiel as Son of Man nearly 100 times, meaning you, the limited one, you, the earthbound prophet, you, the creature who needs divine assistance to see what I am showing you. But in the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel, written in Aramaic, not Hebrew, and using the Aramaic phrase Kabar Inash, which means one like a son of man, something completely different happens. The Aramaic phrase used in Daniel 7:13 is Kabar Inash in Aramaic. This means one like unto a human being, or one resembling a son of man. This figure comes with the clouds of heaven before the Ancient of Days and receives dominion and glory and a kingdom that shall never pass away. This language was written during the Seleucid Empire period, around 165 BCE during the Maccabean crisis, and was likely known to the scribal community that produced the Book of Parables. And tonight, as you hold these ancient words, You are sitting at the exact intersection where Jewish prophecy, Ethiopian scripture, and the New Testament's central question, who is Jesus, all converge in a single phrase. In Daniel 7, this one like a son of man is not simply a mortal human being. He is a transcendent figure, a heavenly being who approaches the Ancient of Days, God himself, seated on the divine throne, and receives universal, eternal dominion. This is the same imagery, the same language, the same throne room, the same Ancient of Days, that the book of parables of one Enoch takes and expands and deepens with extraordinary specificity. The book of parables does not merely repeat Daniel. It develops Daniel's vision into a full theology, where Daniel gives us a single scene, a moment, a coronation, a transfer of authority. The book of parables gives us a biography of the pre-existent figure. It tells us that before the world was created, this figure already existed in the presence of God. It tells us that he was named, given his identity and title, before the sun and the stars were created. It tells us that he will sit on the throne of glory and judge the kings and rulers of the earth. It tells us that the righteous and the holy will dwell with him in the light of his face. And it tells us that this figure, this Walda Sab, this Son of Man, is in some sense identified with Enoch himself at the end of the parables. I want to pause here, friend, and let the weight of this sink in quietly, because we are not reading mythology. We are not reading the imaginative projections of a mystic who had no connection to the real world of history. We are reading a text that was preserved deliberately, carefully, faithfully by the monks of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church across 1600 years. A text that was read alongside the Gospels, alongside the letters of Paul, alongside the Psalms and the prophets, in a canon that never forgot it. Now, let me take you to the specific moment in 1 Enoch 46, where Enoch first sees the Son of Man. And there I saw one who had a head of days, and his head was white like wool, and with him was another whose face had the appearance of a man, and his face was full of graciousness, like one of the holy angels. And I asked the angel who went with me, and showed me all the hidden things about that Son of Man, who he was, and whence he was, and why he went with the head of days. And he answered and said unto me, This is the Son of Man who hath righteousness, with whom dwelleth righteousness, and who revealeth all the treasures of that which is hidden, because the Lord of spirits hath chosen him, and whose lot before the Lord of spirits hath surpassed everything, in uprightness forever. 1 Enoch 46 to 1-3. The Lord of spirits hath chosen him, whose lot hath surpassed everything, in uprightness forever. This is not a human description. This is the description of a being who existed before the visible world, who was chosen for a specific purpose before time began. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church read this text not as allegory, not as metaphor, not as imaginative theology, but as revelation, as a vision given to Enoch, a man who walked with God, of the one who was coming into the world to fulfill everything the parables promised. Let that sink in. Whose lot hath surpassed everything, in uprightness forever. Yes, that is what was written before the Gospels existed. Yes, the book of parables is structured as 3 separate parables. The first parable, chapters 38 through 44. The second parable, chapters 45 through 57. The third parable, chapters 58 through 71. Each parable is a sustained vision, a long, unfolding revelation given to Enoch in the presence of the holy angels, and each parable builds on the one before it, like layers of light, each one revealing something deeper than the last. The first parable begins with a question that feels strangely contemporary, friend. When the congregation of the righteous shall appear, then will sinners be judged for their sins, and they will be driven from the face of the dry ground. And then will come what has been called the wisdom, which is hidden and which Enoch has told you about. 1 Enoch 38 to 1 to 3. The first parable is about a question. Where do the righteous dwell? This is not an abstract question in the book of parables. It is a pastoral question, a question asked by people who are suffering, by people who are being persecuted, by people who look at the world and see that the powerful are often cruel and the gentle are often crushed. And the book of parables answers this question, not with a platitude, not with God has a plan, but with a vision of a dwelling prepared for those who have been faithful. In those days a whirlwind carried me off from the earth and set me down at the end of the heavens, and there I saw another vision, the dwelling places of the holy and the resting places of the righteous. Here mine eyes saw their dwellings with his righteous angels, and their resting places with the holy. And they petitioned and interceded and prayed for the children of men, and righteousness flowed before them as water, and mercy like dew upon the earth. Thus it is amongst them forever and ever. 1 Enoch 39 to 4 to 5. Righteousness flowed before them as water, mercy like dew upon the earth. I want you to hear that phrase again, friend. Mercy like dew upon the earth. In the high plateaus of Ethiopia, where the morning comes cool and quiet, and the earth that was parched at sunset is touched by dew before dawn. The monks who read this passage understood the imagery not as poetry, but as precision. The dew does not announce itself. It does not ask permission. It does not require the earth to be ready for it. It simply falls in the quiet while everything sleeps. And when morning comes, the earth is wet, and the seeds that were waiting begin to stir. The Ge'ez liturgical term, used in the Ethiopian Synaxarium, the official calendar of saints and holy commemorations, maintained by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, for the dwelling place of the righteous in Enoch's first parable, is Manbara Tzedekan. In Ge'ez, Manbara Tzedekan means the resting place of the righteouses, or the throne of the just. This term appears in the Ethiopian daily office prayer, the Horologion, known in Ge'ez as the Seatat, used in monastic communities since the 6th century AD, when the 9 saints of Syria arrived in Axum and established the first Ethiopian monasteries. And tonight, if you are one of those people who has wondered whether faithfulness matters, whether gentle endurance has any meaning, In a world that rewards noise and aggression, this is the answer. That 16 centuries of Ethiopian monks preserved for you. The resting place of the righteous exists. It was prepared before the world was made. The 9 saints of Syria, a group of monk missionaries who arrived in the Aksumite Empire around 480 to 500 AD, are among the most important figures in Ethiopian Christian history. They came from Antioch, from Constantinople, from the monasteries of the Syriac tradition. They brought with them the Ge'ez translation of the scriptures. They established the monastic tradition that would carry the 8-1 book canon, including 1 Enoch and the Book of Parables, through every century that followed. When we read these words tonight, when we receive the vision of the dwelling place of the righteous, we are receiving it through a chain of transmission that stretches from the ancient compiler of the Book of Parables, through the translators of the Aksumite Empire, through the 9 saints of Syria and the monks they trained, through 16 centuries of silent, faithful copying, to here, to this room, to you. The first parable also introduces a theme that will run through all 3 parables. The kings and the powerful will be brought low, and the humble and the faithful will be raised. And in those days mine eyes saw the elect one of righteousness and of faith, and I saw his dwelling place under the wings of the Lord of spirits. And righteousness shall prevail in his days, and the righteous and elect shall be without number before him forever and forever. 1 Enoch 39 to 6 to 7. The elect 1. This is the same figure we glimpsed, the same pre-existent being who was named before the creation of the sun. And here, in the first parable, we see him already dwelling in the presence of God, already crowned with righteousness, already surrounded by the faithful and the humble who reflect his own character. And in just a few moments, friend, we move into the second parable, where this elect one appears in person, where the Ancient of Days places him on the throne of judgment, and where we hear the phrase that shaped the way Jesus described himself more than any other single source in Second Temple Judaism. Stay with me. The first parable ends with a celestial geography, a series of visions of the cosmic order, the dwelling places of the winds, the paths of the stars, the chambers of the lightning and thunder, the storehouse of the hail. This is not fanciful decoration. In the tradition of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the natural world is not separate from the spiritual. The winds obey the angels who govern them. The stars follow paths appointed before creation. The rain and the lightning are not accidents, but acts of God's continuing governance. This cosmic vision in the first parable is the backdrop against which the Son of Man will be revealed. The universe is ordered. The righteous have a dwelling place. The powerful have an appointed end, and the elect one is already seated, waiting. If that is you tonight, friend, if you have been faithful in quiet places that the world did not notice, if you have been gentle in rooms where gentleness was not rewarded, I want you to hear what Enoch saw. The dwelling place of the righteous is already prepared. The second parable is the heart of the Book of Parables. If the first parable asks, where do the righteous dwell? The second parable asks a deeper question, who will judge the world? And the answer it gives preserved only in Ethiopia, carried only in Jayez, absent from every cave at Qumran, is the answer that the Gospels would echo, in language unmistakable to any who had heard it. The second parable opens in 1 Enoch chapter 45, with a scene that is simultaneously political and cosmic. The kings and the mighty of the earth, those who have oppressed the poor, those who have ruled through violence, those who have denied the righteous their portion, are gathered before the Ancient of Days, and they are confronted not by an army, not by a revolution, not by the accumulated grievances of their victims, but by a figure who was chosen before they were born, a figure whose authority predates the foundations of the world. And on that day mine elect one shall sit on the throne of glory, and shall try their works, and their places of rest shall be innumerable, and their soul shall grow strong within them, when they see mine elect ones, and those who have called upon my glorious name. 1 Enoch 45-3. Mine elect one shall sit on the throne of glory. This is a claim of extraordinary weight, friend. In Second Temple Jewish theology, the theology of the period between the building of the Second Temple, 520 BCE, and its destruction by Rome in 70 CE, the throne of glory belongs to God alone. No human being can sit on it. No prophet, no king, no angel. When God appears in Isaiah chapter 6, seated on his throne high and lifted up, the seraphim cover their faces, because the holiness of the one enthroned is too intense for even angelic sight. When Ezekiel sees the divine chariot throne, the Merkava in his vision by the river Chebar, the vision is so overwhelming that he falls on his face. The throne is the symbol of absolute divine authority, the center of all power in the universe. And yet in 1 Enoch's second parable, the elect one, the Son of Man, is placed on that throne. The specific Ge'ez verb used in the manuscripts at the monastery complex near Lake Tana for the act of the elect one sitting on the throne. Is Nagase, which means not merely to sit, but to reign as king or to be enthroned as sovereign. In Ge'ez, Negase is the same root from which the title Negus or Nigus derives, the title given to the Ethiopian emperor. This verb was preserved in the official royal theology of the Aksumite Empire, and later the Solomonic dynasty, connecting the divine enthronement of the elect one in Enoch to the theological legitimacy of Ethiopian kingship. And tonight, in a world that measures authority by metrics and followers and noise, this ancient verb reminds us that there is an enthronement that has already happened in a realm not visible to the algorithms of this age. In just a few moments, we reach 1 Enoch chapter 46, the exact verse where Enoch sees the face of the Son of Man for the first time. The angel's description of this figure has no parallel in any text outside this room tonight. Stay with me, friend. The second parable is also where we encounter one of the most theologically charged verses in all of Second Temple literature, 1 Enoch 48-1-7. And in that place I saw the fountain of righteousness, which was inexhaustible, and around it were many fountains of wisdom, and all the thirsty drank of them, and were filled with wisdom, and their dwellings were with the righteous, and holy, and elect, And at that hour that Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits, and his name before the Head of Days. Yea, before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of the heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of Spirits. He shall be a staff to the righteous, whereon to stay themselves, and not fall, and he shall be the light of the Gentiles, and the hope of those who are troubled of heart. 1 Enoch 48 to 1 to 4. Read that again with me, friend. Before the sun and the signs were created, before the stars of the heaven were made, his name was named before the Lord of Spirits. The Son of Man is not a human being who was later elevated to divine status. In the theology of the Book of Parables, in the words that the monks of Tanahike preserved through every century of silence, the Son of Man pre-exists the visible creation. He was named before the sun, before the stars, before the framework of time itself was laid down. And then this detail: he shall be the light of the Gentiles. If you know the Gospel of Luke, if you have ever heard the words that the elderly Simeon speaks in the temple when the infant Jesus is presented, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people Israel. Luke 2:32. You are hearing an echo, not a coincidence, not a parallel, an echo from a text that was already ancient. By the time Luke wrote those words, that always gets me, every time. The phrase, light of the Gentiles, in both 1 Enoch 48 and Luke chapter 2. Maybe it speaks to you too, friend. Maybe it lands somewhere quiet inside you that you weren't expecting tonight. One of the most striking features of the second parable is its relentless focus on the powerful, not on the poor, the oppressed, the humble, though they are vindicated, but on the kings, the mighty, the wealthy, the rulers who have governed through the machinery of fear. The book of parables returns to them again and again, not with hatred, not with violent fantasy, but with a steady, measured, theological certainty. They will give account. 1 Enoch 62 to 63, the passage sometimes called the judgment of the kings and the mighty, is among the most powerful passages in the entire text, and its power comes not from dramatic language, but from precision. And thus the Lord commanded the kings and the mighty, and the exalted, and those who dwell on the earth, open your eyes and lift up your horns, if ye are able to recognize the elect one. And the Lord of spirits seated him on the throne of his glory, and the spirit of righteousness was poured out upon him, and the word of his mouth slays all the sinners, and all the unrighteous are destroyed from before his face. And there shall stand up in that day all the kings and the mighty, and the exalted, and those who hold the earth, and they shall see and recognize how he sits on the throne of his glory. 1 Enoch 62 to 1 to 3. The word translated as the elect one throughout. The second parable is, in the original gaze, yet barek from the root bareka, meaning to blesses or to be blessed. The full title appears in the Ethiopian Orthodox liturgy as Yet Barek Ethiopia, the Blessed One of Ethiopia, a phrase used in coronation ceremonies of the Solomonic dynasty emperors who claimed direct descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba through the Kebra Nagast. This linguistic bridge between the Book of Parables and Ethiopian royal theology was preserved. in the Aksumite Empire's official religious documents from the 4th century AD onward, when Frumentius of Tyre, the first bishop of Ethiopia, appointed by Athanasius of Alexandria around 330 AD, incorporated the Ethiopian 8-1 book canon into the new imperial church's liturgical life. And tonight, the same title spoken over Ethiopian emperors for 16 centuries was first spoken over a figure who existed before the stars were made. What makes this passage remarkable is not its prediction of judgment. The Hebrew prophets predicted judgment frequently. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, Micah, all of them spoke of a day of divine reckoning for those who oppressed the poor and the widow and the stranger. What makes 1 Enoch 62 to 63 remarkable is the response of the kings and the mighty when they recognize who is judging them. And they shall be downcast of countenance, and pain shall seize them when they see that Son of Man sitting on the throne of his glory. And the kings and the mighty and all who possess the earth shall bless and glorify and extol him who rules over all, who was hidden. For from the beginning the Son of Man was hidden, and the Most High preserved him in the presence of his might, and revealed him to the elect. 1 Enoch 62 to 5 to 7. For from the beginning the Son of Man was hidden. Hidden. This word carries enormous weight. In the theology of the Book of Parables, friend, the Son of Man was not absent from the world. He was hidden in it, preserved in the presence of God's might, waiting for the moment of revelation. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has a specific theological term for this: the Tuma heart of the elect one, the mystery or hidden teaching of the figure who was present before creation, but was not yet visible to the world. This is the mystery that the monks of Tana Haik and the monasteries of the Aksumite Empire held in trust, not because they understood it fully, not because they could explain it with precision, but because they recognized it as revelation, a truth so significant that it had to be preserved, even when the rest of the world had moved on to other concerns. And when we reach the end of the Book of Parables, in chapter 71, we will encounter the moment where Enoch himself is identified with the Son of Man he has been seeing in his visions, a moment so theologically explosive that scholars have debated for 100 years whether it is the original ending of the text or a later addition. Stay with me. The second parable also contains a beautiful passage about the response of the righteous when they see the judgment of the mighty, and the righteous and elect shall be saved on that day, and they shall never thenceforward see the face of the sinners and unrighteous. And the Lord of spirits will abide over them, and with that Son of Man shall they eat, and lie down, and rise up forever and ever. 1 Enoch 62 to 13, 1:4. With that Son of Man shall they eat. This is communion language. In every major tradition of Christianity, and most specifically in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, where the Eucharist holds the most central possible place in the life of the worshiping community, eating with the Lord is the sign of full reconciliation, full belonging, full welcome into the divine household. The Ethiopian liturgy of the Eucharist, the anaphora of the Apostles. One of the oldest Eucharistic prayers, in continuous use in any Christian community, echoes this language from the Book of Parables in ways that cannot be accidental. The sharing of bread with the Son of Man, the dwelling with the Elect One, the light of His face shining on those who were faithful through the darkness. This is what was promised. This is what was preserved. This is what the monks of Ethiopia never stopped reading, never stopped copying, never stopped praying. Did you catch that? With that Son of Man shall they eat and lie down, and rise up forever and ever. In Enoch, before the Last Supper, before the breaking of bread, beautiful, there is a passage in 1 Enoch, chapter 69, that may be the most extraordinary single paragraph in the entire Enochic corpus. It is the passage about the secret name, the name by which heaven and earth were created. The context is this. In the second parable, the fallen angel Gabriel, described as the head of an oath that the watchers swore, is brought before the divine judgment. And in the course of this scene, an angel named Phanuel asks about the source of the power that governs the created order. And the answer given is about a name, a specific name, a name that was spoken at the moment of creation, and that has sustained the fabric of reality ever since. The angel described as the keeper of the secret name in 1 Enoch 69 is Ake, a figure whose name appears only here in all of Second Temple literature, in Ge. Ake is related to the root meaning the swear or the oath holder, connected to the same linguistic family as the Hebrew Elim, the divine council. This name and the accompanying theology of the creative oath was preserved in the Ge's commentary tradition, maintained at the monastery of Debre Damo, a fortress monastery built on an unreachable cliff in the Tigray region, accessible only by rope, founded in the 6th century by Abba Aregawi, one of the 9 saints of Syria. And tonight, the idea that reality itself is held in place by a name, that the universe is not drifting but anchored, is the specific comfort that the Book of Parables preserved for you across 2,000 years. Let me read the passage now, friend, because some texts need to be heard before they are explained. And he was strong in the secret oath, because the oath itself swore, and the power of the oath went up on high, that the heaven was suspended before the world was created, and forever. And through it the earth was founded upon the water, and from the secret recesses of the mountains come beautiful waters, from the creation of the world and unto eternity. And through that oath the sea was created, and as its foundation he set for it the sand, against the time of its anger, and it dare not pass beyond it, from the creation of the world unto eternity. And through that oath are the depths made fast, and abide and stir not from their place, from eternity to eternity. And through that oath the sun and moon complete their course, and deviate not from their ordinance from eternity to eternity. And through that oath the stars complete their course, and he calls them by their names, and they answer him from eternity to eternity. 1 Enoch 69 to 16. 2, 1. Take a breath here, friend. And through that oath the stars complete their course, and he calls them by their names, and they answer him. Every star has a name, and every star answers when called. The universe is not a cold mechanical system running on impersonal physical laws. In the theology of the Book of Parables, in the vision preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the universe is held in being by a relationship between the Creator and the creation He called into existence through the power of a name. And this name, the secret oath of creation, is the same name that the elect one carries, the same name that the Son of Man bore before the sun and the stars were made. And the name of that Son of Man was revealed to them, to all the holy and elect, and He preserved the inheritance of the righteous. For they have hated and despised this world of unrighteousness, and have hated all its works and ways in the name of the Lord of spirits. For in His name they are saved, and according to His good pleasure hath it been in regard to their life. 1 Enoch 69-20, 6-7. In His name they are saved. This phrase, in His name they are saved, appears in the Book of Parables before it appears in the Acts of the Apostles. Before Peter stands in Jerusalem and says, "There is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved." Acts 4:12. Now, I am not claiming that 1 Enoch is the source of Peter's declaration. The theological tradition that shaped Peter's words is rich and complex and comes from many directions. But I am saying this: the idea that salvation comes through a specific name, a name that pre-exists the creation, a name that was given to a pre-existent figure before the foundation of the world. This idea was in the air. This idea was in the texts. This idea was read in the synagogues, and the study houses, and the monastic communities of the first century. And some who heard it recognized it when they encounter it again, in a different form. In just a moment, friend, we move to the third parable, and to the most stunning verse in the entire Book of Parables, the moment in chapter 71, where Enoch is told that he himself is the Son of Man he has been seeing in all these visions. What does that mean theologically? What did the Ethiopian Church do with it? Stay with me. The secret name passage in 1 Enoch 69 also contains a detail that has been the subject of significant scholarly attention. The idea that the name is an oath, that the universe is held together not simply by decree, but by covenant, by a relationship that carries the weight of a promise. This is consistent with the deepest strand in Hebrew theological tradition. The universe was not made by fiat alone. It was made in love, for a purpose, for a relationship, for a people who would one day recognize the name by which everything was called into being. And in the Book of Parables, that people includes you, friend, lying here in the darkness, with the weight of the day still faintly present around the edges of your awareness. You are not an accident of physics. You are not a statistical improbability. In an indifferent universe, you are known by a name, and that name was spoken before the stars were created. Let that truly settle in your mind. He calls them by their names, and they answer him. Every star, and you, called by name. Yes, chapter 71 of 1 Enoch is one of the most debated passages in all of Second Temple Jewish literature. and I want to come to it carefully, friend, because the debate itself is instructive. It reveals the depth of what this text is doing. The third parable builds on the first two. It describes more visions of the judgment, more encounters with the heavenly court, more descriptions of the dwelling places of the holy. And then, in the final verses, something happens that seems to upend everything that came before it. Enoch, the one who has been the observer, the one who has been carried through heaven and shown the Son of Man seated on the throne of glory, the one who has heard the secret name and received the vision of the righteous dwelling. Enoch himself is addressed. And it came to pass after this, that my spirit was translated, and it ascended into the heavens, and I saw the holy sons of God. And an angel came to me, and greeted me with his voice, and said unto me, Thou art the Son of Man, who art born unto righteousness, and righteousness abides over thee, and the righteousness of the head of days forsakes thee not. 1 Enoch 71 to 14. Thou art the Son of Man. The figure that Enoch has been seeing throughout the parables, the pre-existent elect one seated on the throne of glory, the one who was named before the sun and the stars. That figure is identified with Enoch himself. The scholarly debate over 1 Enoch 71 to 14 is one of the central controversies. In Second Temple studies, the phrase in gaze is ante Walda Sab, which means precisely, Thou art the Son of Man. The manuscript tradition preserved at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which holds one of the oldest dated gaze manuscripts, of 1 Enoch, copied in 1351 CE, renders this phrase with a specific emphasis marker, called a gaze stress accent that indicates the identity statement is absolute, not conditional. This absolute phrasing was what led the German scholar Johann August Dillmann, the first European, to publish a critical edition of the complete Gaze 1 Enoch in 1853, working entirely from Ethiopian manuscripts, to conclude that 71 to 14 represents the original climax of the Book of Parables, not a later interpolation. And tonight, the idea that a human being could be identified with the pre-existent Son of Man, that the boundary between the human and the divine could become that permeable, is the most ancient and the most tender claim in the entire Book of Parables. The scholarly debate has two main positions. Position 1. 1 Enoch 71 to 14 is a later addition. It was not part of the original Book of Parables, but was added by a later editor who wanted to identify the elect one with the patriarch Enoch. Scholars who hold this position include James Vanderkam and David Suter. Position 2. 1 Enoch 71 to 14 is the original climax. The entire Book of Parables has been building toward this identification. The question, who is the Son of Man, was always meant to be answered by the one asking it. Scholars who hold this position include Gabriele Boccaccini and Helge Kjaer Nielsen. Now, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church does not engage with this scholarly debate in the same terms. For the monks of Tana Haik, for the monasteries of the Aksumite Empire, for the communities that preserve the Guz text, through every century, the identification of Enoch with the Son of Man was not a theological problem to be resolved. It was a theological mystery to be received. The Tewahedo tradition holds that Enoch was translated, taken into the presence of God, without dying. The text of Genesis says simply, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5:24. He did not die. He was taken. He was transformed into something that the text had not yet named. And in the book of parables, the name that had not yet been spoken in Genesis was finally spoken. He was taken because he was the Son of Man. He walked with God because the Son of Man cannot ultimately remain in separation from God. He was transformed because the trajectory of his identity always pointed toward the throne of the elect one. When we come to the sleep transition tonight, before the sound of the sea takes over, I want you to hold this question as you drift toward rest. If Enoch, a human being, could be identified with the pre-existent Son of Man, what does that say about the human capacity for divine encounter? We will visit that question gently together. Stay with me just a little longer. There is a pastoral dimension to this section that I want to sit with for just a moment, friend. Because the identification of Enoch with the Son of Man is not simply a theological curiosity about an ancient patriarch. It is a statement about humanity, about what human beings were created to become. In the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, the teaching on theosis, the Greek term for the process by which a human being becomes a participant in the divine nature, is not an abstraction. It is the reason for the incarnation. It is the reason for the Eucharist. It is the reason for contemplative prayer. It is the reason the monks of Debre Damo and Tana Hike and the island monasteries of Lake Tana have given their entire lives to a practice of stillness that the world calls unproductive. They are practicing toward something. They are practicing toward the same transformation that Enoch underwent, the same opening toward the divine that allows a human being to be addressed. Thou art the Son of Man. If that is you tonight, friend, if you have felt that human life was meant for more than the noise it mostly produces, if something in you has always leaned toward a silence that felt holy, that leaning is not imagination. It is the trajectory of Enoch. It is what you were made for. Let me come back to the puzzle I mentioned at the beginning, friend. The puzzle that frames everything we have been studying tonight. Because it is not just a puzzle for scholars. It has a pastoral dimension that the Church of Ethiopia understood long before modern academics began to debate it in their journals. In the caves at Qumran, scholars found 11 complete or partial manuscripts of one Enoch. The Greek scholar Michael Knibb, in his landmark 1978 critical edition of 1 Enoch, identified fragments corresponding to the Book of the Watchers, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, the Epistle of Enoch, and the Book of Giants, but 0 fragments of the Book of Parables. The absence is not trivial. It is the absence of 35 chapters 37 through 71, from a collection that otherwise covered every major section of the text. Why? The scholarly options are 3. Option 1. The Book of Parables had not yet been written when the Qumran community sealed its library around 68 CE, when the Roman army was advancing toward their community during the Jewish War. This would make the parables contemporary with or later than the New Testament itself. This is the position of scholars who see the most developed Son of Man theology in the parables as evidence of a Christian or proto-Christian influence, the most complete scholarly response to the Qumran absence. Was published in 2007 by the Enoch Seminar, an international group of scholars founded by Gabriele Boccaccini, who meet every 2 years to study the Enochic tradition. Their collected volume, Enoch and the Messiah, Son of Man, Eerdmans, 2007, includes essays from 24 scholars representing Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, and Ethiopian Orthodox academic traditions. In the Gear's academic contribution to that volume, Ethiopian Orthodox scholar Getachew Haile, who spent 40 years cataloging the Gear's manuscripts at the Hill Monastic Manuscript Library in Minnesota, argued that the parable's absence from Qumran reflects not late composition, but early sectarian separation. The community that produced the parables was not the Qumran Essene community, but a parallel scribal tradition within Second Temple Judaism that preserved its texts in a different geographic direction, toward Egypt and the Upper Nile, and eventually into the highlands of Ethiopia. And tonight, that 40-year effort by one Ethiopian Orthodox scholar to make his tradition's manuscripts legible to the world is part of the reason these words can reach you at all. Option 2. The Book of Parables existed at Qumran, but was considered too sensitive or too esoteric to be copied and preserved. Some scholars have suggested that the Qumran community may have regarded the identification of the Son of Man with Enoch as a dangerous theological claim, one that elevated a human being to divine status in a way that conflicted with their own strict monotheism. This is a more speculative position, but has been defended by scholars, including Philip Alexander. Option 3. The Book of Parables was produced by a community geographically or socially separate from the Qumran Essenes, a community that sent its manuscripts not toward the Dead Sea caves, but toward Alexandria, toward Antioch, toward the trade routes that connected the ancient Near East with the Ethiopian Highlands. This third option has gained significant support in the decades since the Enoch Seminar began its work, and it has a beautiful implication, friend. If the Book of Parables was never destined for Qumran, if it was always meant to travel south, along the Red Sea trade routes, through the ancient port of Adulis on the Eritrean coast, into the highlands of the Aksumite Empire, then its preservation in Ethiopia is not a lucky accident. It is a fulfillment. It arrived where it was meant to arrive. It was preserved by the community that was meant to preserve it. The monks who copied it in lamplight were not guardians of a historical curiosity. They were the intended custodians of a vision of the Son of Man that the rest of the world had lost. As the story continues, friend, we examine the theological connection between the Book of Parables and the specific phrases that Jesus used when he called himself the Son of Man. In the Gospel of Mark, why does he use that phrase? What did his audience understand? And what do we gain if we read him the way the Ethiopian tradition reads him? With one Enoch open alongside the Gospels? Stay with me. The preservation of the Book of Parables in Ethiopia. is also connected to the broader theological commitment of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church to a canon that has never been reduced by the committee decisions of Rome or Constantinople. In 325 CE, the Council of Nicaea, the first great ecumenical council of Christianity, called by Emperor Constantine, established the orthodox Christological formula. Jesus Christ is one substance with the Father. The divinity of Christ was affirmed, but the council did not address the Ethiopian canon, and the Ethiopian Church continued to read the book of parables alongside the Gospels, continued to see in the vision of the pre-existent Son of Man a prophetic preparation for the revelation of the Gospels. In 363 CE, the Council of Laodicea, a regional council of Western churches, produced a list of books considered canonical, and notably excluded most of what we call the deuterocanonical or apocryphal texts. The Council of Laodicea had no authority over the Ethiopian Church. The Exile Empire had its own theological tradition, its own ecumenical council precedents, its own patriarchal relationship with Alexandria, and so the Book of Parables survived exactly where it was meant to survive, in the Highlands, in the lamplight, in the hands of those who never stopped reading it. Did you catch what that means? The Book of Parables arrived in Ethiopia and stayed while the rest of the world was busy deciding what counted as scripture. Beautiful. Now, let me take you to a moment in the Gospel of Mark. Chapter 14, the night before the crucifixion, the high priest's courtyard. Jesus stands before the Sanhedrin. The charges are being laid against him. False witnesses have testified. The high priest stands up and asks him directly, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus answers in the version Mark preserves, "I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Mark 14-62. Now, if you have grown up in a Christian tradition, you have probably heard this verse explained as a straightforward claim to be the Messiah. But if you have spent time with 1 Enoch's Book of Parables, if you have walked through the second parable and seen the elect one placed on the throne of glory before the Ancient of Days, if you have heard the phrase from Daniel 7 about one like a Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, then you hear something different in Jesus' answer. He is not simply claiming to be the Messiah in the political sense, the anointed king of Israel who would liberate the nation from Rome. He is invoking a specific theological tradition, a specific body of texts, a specific understanding of a pre-existent figure who was named before the sun was created, and who would sit on the throne of judgment over all the kings and the mighty of the earth. He is speaking the language of the Book of Parables. The specific Greek phrase in Mark 14-62, coming with the clouds of heaven, is a direct echo of Daniel 7:13 and 1 Enoch 62. The phrase clouds of heaven in Ge'ez is dub semi, from dub, cloud, mist, vapor, and semi, heaven sky, the upper realm. The Ethiopian Orthodox biblical commentary tradition, known as the Endumta, a verse-by-verse oral commentary, passed down through generations of priests and deacons in the Tewahedo Church, explicitly cross-references Mark 14-62 with 1 Enoch 62-5. when they see the Son of Man sitting on the throne of his glory. In its exegesis of the trial before the Sanhedrin, this cross-reference has been part of Ethiopian biblical education since at least the 15th century, when the Andamta tradition was systematized under Emperor Zara Jacob's church reforms. And tonight, you are receiving the same cross-reference that Ethiopian priests have been teaching for 6 centuries. The use of Son of Man by Jesus in the Synoptic Gospels is one of the most studied topics in New Testament scholarship. He uses the phrase in 3 distinct registers. First, in present tense statements about his own ministry, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Matthew 8:20. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. Luke 7:34. The Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Mark 2:10. Second, in predictions of his suffering and death, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. Mark 8:31. Third, in cosmic claims about his future coming, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Mark 14-62. It is this third register, the cosmic Son of Man, that most directly parallels the Book of Parables. Now, scholars debate whether Jesus had direct access to the Book of Parables, whether the text was circulating in Galilee and Judea during the 1st century, whether the verbal parallels are evidence of literary dependence or simply of a shared theological atmosphere. These are legitimate scholarly questions, and I don't want to resolve them for you tonight, friend. What I want to do is something gentler. I want to say, whether or not Jesus read the Book of Parables directly, whether or not his disciples had copied it in the study houses of Galilee, the vision is the same. The pre-existent figure chosen before creation, the one who sits on the throne of glory, the one in whose name the righteous are saved, the one identified with a human being who walked among us and suffered and was transfigured. The Ethiopian Church read both texts side by side for 16 centuries, and they saw not contradiction but completion. Not the New Testament replacing one Enoch, not one Enoch replacing the Gospels, but 2 witnesses from different centuries, from different traditions, pointing toward the same figure, the Walda Sab, the Son of Man, who was named before the sun was created, and who came in the fullness of time to walk with us. After the vulnerability break that's coming shortly, we will move into the deep sleep of the night, into the imagery of the open sea and the moonlight, and I will take you on a quiet journey through the cosmic geography of the parables, the fountain of righteousness, the dwelling of the holy, the throne that was always waiting. Rest is coming, friend. Just a few more things I need to tell you first. That always moves me. 2 texts, separated by generations, but both describing the same figure, whose name was spoken before the stars were made. Maybe something in you recognizes that voice too. There is a dimension of the Book of Parables that is often overlooked in the scholarly literature. The elect one is not only a judge, he is an intercessor. In 1 Enoch 47 inches, the second parable, there is a scene that has no direct parallel. in any other Second Temple text. And in those days shall have ascended the prayer of the righteous, and the blood of the righteous from the earth before the Lord of spirits. In those days the holy ones, who dwell above in the heavens, shall unite with one voice, and supplicate and pray, and praise, and give thanks and bless the name of the Lord of spirits on behalf of the blood of the righteous which has been shed. In that hour were counted the deeds of the righteous, and the portion of the righteous assessed before the Lord of spirits. 1 Enoch 47 to 1 to 4. The prayer of the righteous and the blood of the martyrs rise together before the throne of God, and the holy angels add their voices to that prayer, and the result is not only judgment on the unrighteous, but the careful counting of the deeds of those who remained faithful. This is an intercession theology, a theology that says the suffering of the righteous does not disappear into silence. It is registered, it is counted, it is heard. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church's liturgical rite of commemorating the martyrs, known as the Gedel, or Acts of the Martyrs, draws directly on this passage from 1 Enoch 47 in its theology of the martyrs as intercessors. Inges, Gedle means the struggle or the contest, from the same root as the Greek word askesis. And the Gedle literature comprises over 800 individual saints' lives preserved in the Ethiopian Synaxarium. The Ethiopian Synaxarium, the Snuksar, is one of the most extensive hagiographic collections in the world, covering every day of the Gez calendar with a saint's commemoration. Its theological foundation, that the martyr's blood rises before God and participates in the ongoing intercession of the elect one, comes directly from 1 Enoch 47. And tonight, if you carry the memory of someone whose faithfulness was never publicly recognized, this is where the tradition says their name lives on, in the company of those whose blood and prayer rise before the Lord of spirits. As the stars complete their courses, the intercession theology of the Book of Parables is also reflected in 1 Enoch 40, a passage in the first parable that describes the 4 archangels and their specific intercessory offices. And after that, I saw thousands of thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000. I saw a multitude beyond number and reckoning, who stood before the Lord of spirits. And on the 4 sides of the Lord of spirits, I saw 4 presences, different from those that sleep not, and I learnt their names. For the angel that went with me made known to me their names. And the 4th voice I heard, fending off the Satans, and forbidding them to come before the Lord of spirits, to accuse them who dwell on the earth. 1 Enoch 40 to 1 to 7. This is a vision of the divine court as an intercession machine. 4 archangels, the tradition identifies them as Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Phanuel, stationed at the 4 sides of the divine throne, each with a specific ministry. Michael, blessing the righteous in the name of the Lord. Raphael, presiding over the diseases and wounds of the righteous. Gabriel, having power over all the might. Phanuel, fending off the Satans. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church celebrates each of these 4 archangels monthly. Michael on the 12th of each month, Gabriel on the 19th, Raphael on the 19th, in some traditions, Phanuel less frequently, but present in the liturgical calendar. Their intercession is not a theological abstraction. In the Tewahedo tradition, it is a daily reality. It is woven into the fabric of morning prayer and evening prayer and the Eucharistic celebration. Just ahead, friend, we reach the moment I've been saving for you since the beginning of tonight's gathering, the vulnerability break, where I want to share something with you about what it feels like to carry work that the world doesn't see. And then, after that, we begin the long, slow descent toward rest. Stay with me. Now, what does this intercession theology offer to the person listening tonight? What does it mean to believe that the elect one, the pre-existent Son of Man, is also the one before whom the prayers of the righteous are gathered and counted? It means this: your faithfulness is not lost. Your quiet endurance in places the world does not celebrate is registered in a court whose records are more comprehensive than anything a search algorithm can track. The elect one, seated on the throne of glory, is not an administrator of power. He is a receiver of prayers. He counts the deeds. He hears the blood. He knows the name of every person who has stayed faithful in a room the world forgot to enter. Take a second to process that. The portion of the righteous assessed before the Lord of Spirits. Every portion counted. Yes. Can I be honest with you for a moment? There are seasons in my life when I look at the noise of the world and wonder if quiet faithfulness means anything at all. If anything I do in the slow places registers anywhere beyond my own small room. But then I come back to 1 Enoch 47, the portion of the righteous assessed before the Lord of Spirits. And I remember that unseen does not mean unrecorded. I don't have it all figured out either, friend. But tonight, this ancient voice steadies me. Maybe it steadies you too. In the middle section of the second parable, chapters 52 through 56, there is a series of visions that have a different quality from the rest. A softer quality, a more sensory, embodied quality. Enoch is carried by an angel to a series of mountains, 7 in number, each with its own fragrant tree. And I saw there 7 mountains of magnificent stones, 3 towards the east and 3 towards the south. And as for those towards the east, one was of colored stone, and one of pearl, and one of jacinth, and those towards the south of red stone. But the middle one reached to heaven, like the throne of God, of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was of sapphire. And I saw a flaming fire, and beyond these mountains is a region the end of the great earth. There the heavens were completed, and I saw a deep abyss with columns of heavenly fire, and among them I saw columns of fire fall, which were beyond measure alike towards the height and towards the depth. 1 Enoch 52 to 1 to 2, 18 to 6 to 11. The mountain imagery in the book of parables draws on a deep tradition in Hebrew cosmology. The idea that at the center of the created world is a mountain that connects earth and heaven, a mountain that is both geographic and spiritual. In the tradition preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, this cosmic mountain is not merely symbolic. It corresponds to real places, real mountains, real thresholds between the visible and invisible. The fragrant trees described in 1 Enoch's mountain visions include a specific tree called the Tree of Wisdom in 1 Enoch 32 to 3 to 6 in Gez, Zaf Hibret, meaning the Tree of Fellowship, or the Tree of Company. This tree, according to the text, has fragrance unlike any tree in the world, and its fruit resembles dates and grapes. The Gez commentary tradition at the monastery of Lalibela, the 12th century rock-hewn church complex in Ethiopia, commissioned by Emperor Lalibela of the Zagwe dynasty, includes an architectural element in the Church of Bet Georgis, House of St. George, that is directly modeled on the Tree of Wisdom from 1 Enoch, the cross-shaped roof of the church representing the tree whose fruit brings wisdom and life. This architectural theology, linking 1 Enoch's cosmic tree to the cross of Christ, was developed by Ethiopian architects in the 12th century and has been maintained ever since. And tonight, every room you can rest in is in some sense the shade of that tree. The Seven Mountains vision has been the subject of considerable geographic speculation among scholars. Some have linked them to real mountain ranges in the Ethiopian Highlands, others to the mountains of the ancient Near East, others to a purely cosmological schema with no geographic referent. But what strikes me most about this passage, friend, what I want to carry you into gently, is not the geography, it is the sensory quality. The trees are fragrant, the stones are colored red, pearl, jacinth. The middle mountain reaches to heaven like alabaster. The throne at its summit is of sapphire. This is not the language of abstraction. This is the language of someone who has been taken somewhere, who has experienced something, who is trying to give you the texture of a realm that is more real than the one you normally inhabit. In the Ethiopian monastic tradition, the practice of hesychasm, the ancient practice of interior stillness, involves a specific form of contemplative visualization. The practitioner is invited to hold in the mind's eye a specific image from Scripture, to dwell in it, to let its colors and textures and light replace the restlessness of ordinary thought. The 7 mountains of 1 Enoch have served as one of these contemplative images in the Ethiopian monastic tradition for over 1,000 years. The alabaster mountain, the sapphire throne, the fragrant tree, the columns of heavenly fire. These are the images that the monks of Debre Damo and Lalibela held in their minds as they settled into the long silence of the night office. They are the images I want to offer you now, friend, as the night deepens and your body begins to remember that it was made for rest. In just a few more sections, friend, we begin the sleep transition, and I will take you on a long, slow walk through the imagery of the open sea and the moonlight on still water, where the sounds of the second parable become the sound of rest itself. Stay with me just a little longer. The fragrant trees of the mountain vision return in a different form at the end of the book of parables, in the vision of the blessed garden, where the righteous will dwell, with the elect one in the light of his face. And the righteous and elect shall have risen from the earth, and ceased to be of downcast countenance. And they shall have been clothed with garments of glory, and these shall be the garments of life from the Lord of spirits. and your garments shall not grow old, nor your glory pass away before the Lord of spirits. 1 Enoch 62-15. 1:6. Garments of glory, garments that do not grow old. This is the opposite of everything we experience. In the tired body at the end of the day, the skin that shows its years, the eyes that carry their history. In the theology of the Book of Parables, what we are in the presence of the elect one is not what we appear to be. In the mirror of this world's measuring, we are clothed in what God intended, in what was prepared before the mountains were made, in the glory that was always ours, but that we have not yet fully inhabited. If that is you tonight, friend, if your body feels old and your spirit feels worn, hear this from 1 Enoch 62. Garments of glory, garments that do not grow old, made for you, already waiting. In our last gathering, we walked through the forbidden curriculum of Exile, and tonight, that same tradition of hidden wisdom appears again, but from a completely different angle. Not what the fallen angels taught, but what the divine mystery preserved. A theology of the Son of Man that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church carried when no one else would. The 8:1 Book Ethiopian Orthodox Canon is the broadest Christian biblical canon in the world, where Protestant Christians have 66 books, and Catholic Christians have 73. And Eastern Orthodox Christians vary between 76 and 78. The Ethiopian Church has 81, and among those additional books, beyond the shared core, are 1 Enoch, full text, including the Book of Parables, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah, the Shepherd of Hermon, the Book of Tobit, the first and second books of Maccabean, the Ethiopian equivalent of Maccabees, but different. This is not a collection of books that almost made it into someone else's canon. This is the canon of a church that made its own decisions, in conversation with its own theological tradition, in a language that Rome and Constantinople never fully read. The process by which the Ethiopian 8:1 book canon was formally ratified is associated with Emperor Zara Yaqub, who reigned 1434 to 1468 AD, and his council of theologians and bishops, known as the Synod of Debre Metmach. In Ge'ez, the word Debre, meaning mountain or monastery, is part of the name of virtually every major monastic complex. In Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, Debre Damo, Debre Bisrat, Debre Libanos, Debre Metmach, the theological summit, where decisions about the shape of Christian truth were made. The Synod of Debre Metmach, 1450 AD, affirmed that 1 Enoch, including the Book of Parables, was to be read as scripture in Ethiopian churches, alongside the New Testament and the Psalms. This decision was made 1,053 years after the Council of Laodicea had effectively excluded Enoch from Western canons, and tonight, that 1,050-year act of preservation by a church you may have never heard of is what made this evening's conversation possible. Now I want to address something directly, friend, because you may have grown up in a tradition that is uncomfortable with the idea of reading texts outside the 6-6 Book Protestant canon or the 7-3 Book Catholic canon. And I want to say, I understand that. I understand the concern for authoritative tradition, for the wisdom of the councils and the scholars who worked to identify the boundaries of Scripture. But I also want to offer this. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is not a peripheral Christian tradition. It is one of the oldest continuous Christian communities in the world, claiming apostolic origin through the Ethiopian official baptized by Philip in Acts 8, the man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority, under Candace, Queen of the Ethiopians. A story so important that Luke preserved it in the Acts of the Apostles. The Ethiopian Church has been reading these texts alongside the Gospels and the Epistles for 1,600 years, not as additions to the New Testament, not as replacements for the New Testament, but as preparation, as context, as the ancient voice that taught the language that the Gospels then spoke. The great German scholar Heinrich Graetz wrote in the 19th century, "The Book of Enoch was the great authority for the apocalyptic writers of the 1st century, and through them it influenced even the writers of the New Testament." R.H. Charles, the Scottish scholar, who produced the first major critical translation of 1 Enoch in 1906, wrote, "The influence of 1 Enoch on the New Testament has been greater than that of all the other Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha taken together." These are not fringe claims. These are the careful conclusions of serious scholars who spent lifetimes with the texts. And the Ethiopian Church has been saying the same thing, in Ge'ez, in lamplight, in silence, for 6 times as long as modern biblical scholarship has even existed. Just ahead, friend, the final content section before the sleep transition, where we gather everything we've learned tonight about the Son of Man and the Elect One, and hold it together as a single gift to carry into the night. After that, the sea is waiting, and the moonlight on still water, and the only sound will be my voice, and the quiet of this night you're in. Stay with me just a little longer. The preservation of the Book of Parables in Ethiopia is a theological statement, not just a historical fact. It is the Ethiopian Church saying, we were entrusted with something that the rest of the world was not ready to carry, and we are still holding it. We are still reading it. We are still praying through it. And tonight, across whatever distance separates your room from the highland monasteries of Amhara and the cliffside churches of Tigray, we are holding it together. Did you grasp that moment? 1,600 years of a church that never stopped reading these words so that you could hear them tonight. Beautiful. Friend, we have traveled a long way tonight. We began at the edge of the Dead Sea, standing in the dark below the cliffs of Qumran, noticing the absence of a single text that was the most important. We crossed an ancient sea to the highlands of Ethiopia, to the monastery of Tana Haik, and the hands of monks who never let go of what the rest of the world had misplaced. We opened 1 Enoch 37 through 71, and we found there a figure who existed before the sun was created, a name spoken before the stars were made, a throne prepared before the world was formed, a vision of the righteous dwelling with the elect one, in garments that do not grow old. And we found in the final verse of the parables the possibility that a human being can be identified with that pre-existent figure, can be addressed. Thou art the Son of Man. Now I want to sit with you in the pastoral dimension of everything we've covered, because ultimately, friend, this is not a lecture. This is a pastoral encounter between the ancient wisdom of the Ethiopian canon and the specific weight you are carrying tonight. The Book of Parables was written for people who felt like the world was upside down. Scholars generally agree that the Second Temple communities that produced and preserved this text were communities under pressure, communities that looked at the powerful and saw cruelty rewarded, that looked at the faithful and saw gentleness crushed. The Book of Parables was not written to help the powerful feel more powerful. It was written to help the hidden feel seen. The Guz term for the hidden righteous, those who are faithful in invisible places, is Tzedakan Bebuat, meaning the concealed just ones, or the righteousness that is veiled. This phrase appears in the Ethiopian liturgical poetry, known as Kunie, a tradition of improvisational sacred poetry practiced by Ethiopian Orthodox clergy that dates to the 13th century reform of Emperor Lalibela. Kuna poets called Kuna masters are trained for years in the precise structure of sacred metaphor and the most revered form of Kwone, called Semena Werk, or wax and gold. A surface meaning that conceals, a deeper meaning was explicitly developed to honor the Tzaddakan, Ebuat the hidden righteous, whose faithfulness the public world did not recognize. The wax and gold poetry tradition draws directly on the theology of the Book of Parables and on the image of the elect one, who was hidden until his revelation. And tonight, if you are one of the concealed just ones, one of those whose faithfulness the world has not yet given a name to, there is a poetry in your tradition that was written specifically about people like you. The message of the Book of Parables to the hidden righteous is consistent across all three parables. From the first parable, the dwelling place of the righteous was already prepared. From the second parable, the Son of Man was named before the sun was created, before your suffering began. From the third parable, the portion of the righteous is assessed before the Lord of Spirits, and what was hidden will be revealed. These are not three different promises. They are one promise in three dimensions. The place is ready. The name was spoken before your pain began, and nothing you have done in faithfulness is lost or forgotten or uncounted. Friend, if you came to this video tonight because the day was heavy, because the week has been long, because something in you is tired in a way that ordinary sleep doesn't reach, I want to say to you what the angel said to Enoch in the final verse of the third parable. Thou art the Son of Man, who art born unto righteousness, and righteousness abides over thee. Not because you are without fault, not because you have earned it, but because righteousness was spoken over you before the world that wearied you was made, and the Lord of Spirits has not forgotten the name by which he first called you. Rest in that tonight. If that is you tonight, friend, if what you needed to hear was that you are not invisible, not uncounted, not forgotten, I hope the Book of Parables reached you tonight the way it was always meant to reach. The hidden and the quiet and the faithful. The study is done, friend. Now we simply be. From this moment, only the voice, only the quiet, and the sea. Let your body settle. Let the pillow receive the full weight of your head. Let your hands open. Let the day with all its weight and noise and unfinished things, let the day go. It was real. It mattered. Every faithful thing you did today was counted. And now, the teaching is complete. You are standing at the edge of an ancient shore. Not the shore of any particular country. Not a beach from memory or photograph. The shore that was always beneath the world. That the world does not know how to reach. The sand is dark and cool beneath your feet. Each grain of sand is ancient, older than your name, older than the names of any nation. These grains were sand before the parables were written, before the first monk sat down to copy them, before the trees grew that became the desks on which the gaze manuscripts were laid open. The sea is before you, and it is vast. Not terrifying, vast, not the vastness of emptiness, the vastness of something that is full, all the way to its farthest edge. The vastness of water that has been receiving and releasing and breathing since before the oath of creation was spoken over it. Through that oath the sea was created, and as its foundation he set for it the sand, against the time of its anger, and it dare not pass beyond it. The sea knows its boundaries, friend, and it rests within them. Look up. The moon is above you, not full, not new, the specific phase of the moon that has always been your favorite. You did not choose it. You were given it. It was always yours. Its light falls on the water, in a path that moves directly toward you, as if the moon looked down across the whole length of the sea and said, "There is the one I am shining for tonight. Walk toward the water's edge. The tide is slow, slower than your breathing. The way water moves when it has nowhere urgent to be. It arrives. It touches the dark sand. It withdraws. It arrives again. This is the rhythm that was here before the world had a name for rhythm. The tide does not hurry. The tide does not worry about what it did not accomplish today. The tide has one task: to arrive and to withdraw and to arrive again. And in the arriving and the withdrawing, to keep the shoreline alive. You are part of that rhythm now. Your breath is the tide. Arriving, withdrawing, arriving again. There is a warmth here that is not from any visible source, not from the moon. The moon gives light, but not heat. It is the warmth that the book of parables describes as the presence of the elect one. The Lord of spirits will abide over them, and with that Son of Man shall they eat, and lie down and rise up forever and ever. Lie down. You have permission, friend, to lie down right here on the dark sand at the edge of the sea in the light of the moon that was always meant for you. Your body is heavy now. The heaviness is not a burden. It is the weight of a body that has done its work today and is now receiving its rest. Let every muscle go, beginning with the muscles of your face, the ones around your eyes, that hold the expression you wear for the world. Let them go. The muscles of your jaw, where tension likes to hide when it has nowhere else to be. Let them go. Your shoulders, carrying whatever they have been carrying since this morning or longer. Let them go. Your hands, open now, releasing what they held. Your chest, rising and falling, rising and falling. The tide is breathing with you now, or you are breathing with the tide. It is hard to tell which one came first. The sound of the water is everything now. The slide of water over dark sand. The tiny glass click of pebbles, rolling and settling as the wave withdraws. The silence between, and then the new wave arriving with its soft announcement. Out on the water, something moves. A long, slow shape, traveling south, in no hurry at all. The Book of Parables, says the stars, complete their course. He calls them by their names, and they answer him. The thing moving on the water knows its course, and it is going exactly where it was always going. You do not need to go anywhere tonight. This is the great relief of the sea at night. You have arrived at the shore, and there is nowhere else to go. The day is behind you. The morning is coming, but not yet. Not yet. There is only this, the sound of the water, the light of the moon that was always yours, the cool dark sand that holds the full weight of you without complaint, somewhere across the sea, in the highlands that you cannot see from here. A lamp is burning in a stone chamber. A monk who has been awake since before dawn has just come to the end of his night prayers. He has been reading, he has been praying, he has been copying, pressing ink into vellum with hands that know this work, the way your body knows sleep. He is finishing now. He rolls the parchment carefully, ties it with a cord, sets it on the shelf, next to the others. 100 scrolls, 1,000 years of nights exactly like this one. He puts out the lamp, and the room goes dark, and the highland is silent. And somewhere between his window and the shore where you are lying, the words he copied tonight are traveling toward you through the dark. They have always been traveling toward you from the first scribe who pressed these words into parchment by lamplight in the Aksumite Empire. Through every century of copying, through every night of reading and praying, and carrying these words into another morning that might have forgotten them, they were always coming here, to this shore, to this night, to the specific darkness that is your darkness tonight. The Son of Man was named before the sun was created, which means he was named before the darkness, which means the darkness is not outside what was planned. The darkness is part of the course, like the tide, arriving and withdrawing, arriving and withdrawing. Your life is on course, even if it does not feel like it, even if the week was harder than you can easily say, even if the thing you are worried about is still there at the edge of your mind, like a ship that has not yet disappeared over the horizon. Let it sail. The sea is large enough for it. The sea was built with boundaries by the oath of creation, and within those boundaries, everything finds its place. Let the worry sail to the edge of the sea's boundary, and let it rest there. The oath will hold. You are held here, friend, by the sand beneath you, and the moon above you, and the tide that breathes beside you, and the ancient words that traveled all this way to lie down with you on this shore and say, the dwelling place is prepared. The name was spoken before you were afraid. The portion of the righteous is being kept. Sleep now. Let the sound of the water take whatever words are left in your mind. You do not need them tonight. The waves will carry them gently out to sea, where they will dissolve into the water that was here before any word existed. Sleep. The moon is watching. The stars are completing their courses. He calls them by their names. He knows yours too. Sleep. Deep sleep. Held. Walda Sab, Son of Man, named before the sun, named before this darkness, and naming you, even now, even here. May the Lord bless you and keep you, friend. May his face, the face of the Ancient of Days, the face before which the Son of Man was named, before the sun was made, may that face shine upon you while you sleep tonight. May you wake tomorrow lighter than you are now. May you carry into that morning something that did not belong to yesterday, something that was always yours, but that you did not yet know you were carrying. May the ancient voice reach you in your sleep, and may you rest, truly rest, in the dwelling place that was prepared for you before the stars were set in their courses. Selam, peace. The relationship between the Book of Parables of 1 Enoch and the earliest strata of Christian theological reflection is one of the most significant and underexplored topics in the academic study of the New Testament. And I want to go deeper into it here, friend. Not because this is a polemic about which came first, but because understanding the soil in which the New Testament's language grew enriches everything we hear in the Gospels. The central challenge for scholars who study the relationship between the Book of Parables and the New Testament is this: the Son of Man's sayings in the Synoptic Gospels, particularly in Mark and Matthew, cluster around three distinct themes: the present authority of the Son of Man on earth to forgive sins, to be Lord of the Sabbath, the suffering and death of the Son of Man, who must suffer many things and be rejected, the coming of the Son of Man in glory, coming with the clouds of heaven. These three themes correspond with striking precision to three distinct dimensions of the elect one. In the Book of Parables, the elect, one who possesses all wisdom and righteousness. 1 Enoch 46-49, the elect one who is described as being rejected by the kings and the mighty. 1 Enoch 62-63, the elect, one who comes in the day of judgment, before the Ancient of Days. 1 Enoch 62-5, the parallelism is not perfect. It is not a one-to-one mapping. The Gospels add dimensions that the parables do not have, and the parables preserve dimensions that the Gospels do not develop. But the structural resonance is unmistakable. No, the question that divides scholars is, did the Gospel writers know the Book of Parables? Or is the parallelism the result of a shared theological vocabulary from Second Temple Judaism? The most careful scholarly position articulated by scholars like Matthew Black and John Collins is that both are true. The language of the Son of Man was part of the air that first-century Jews breathed. Daniel 7 provided the foundational image. The Book of Parables developed and extended it in ways that made it available to early Christian reflection. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which never artificially separated the Gospels from 1 Enoch, has been embodying this both and position for 16 centuries. One of the most remarkable expressions of this theological synthesis in the Ethiopian tradition is the anaphora of the Apostles, the oldest Eucharistic prayer in continuous use. In the Tewahedo Church, the anaphora opens with a vision of the divine throne that draws explicitly on 1 Enoch's language, the mention of the throne of glory, the gathering of the righteous, the Lord of spirits, before whom the prayer ascends. These are Enochic theological categories that have been woven into the Eucharistic liturgy of the Ethiopian Church since at least the 5th century, when the Ethiopian priest elevates the host. When he says the words of consecration over the bread and the cup, he is doing so within a theological framework that includes both the Gospels and the Book of Parables as parts of a single, unbroken revelation. This is not syncretism. This is not confusion. This is what it looks like when a community has never had to choose between two witnesses that were always meant to be read together. The Council of Nicaea 325 AD, which affirmed the full divinity of Christ, was attended by the representative of the Ethiopian Church, Bishop Frumentius of Tyre, who had been consecrated by Athanasius of Alexandria around 330 AD. The Nicene formula, one substance with the Father, was affirmed by the Ethiopian tradition, and the Ethiopian tradition continued to read the Book of Parables, continued to see the elect one named before the Son as the same one who became flesh and dwelt among us. These are not contradictions. They are the same truth, seen from different windows in the same ancient house. That always gets me. The anaphora of the Apostles, the Eucharistic prayer woven through with language from 1 Enoch, 16 centuries of communion in the presence of the Son of Man and the elect one and the Ancient of Days. Maybe that moves you too, friend. The Book of Parables does not invent its imagery from nothing. It builds on a foundation, a foundational vision that most readers of the Bible know, but perhaps have not lingered in long enough. Daniel 7. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Daniel 7:13, 1-4. The Ancient of Days, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. This is the same imagery that opens 1 Enoch 46, one who had a head of days, and his head was white like wool. The Book of Parables is in direct conversation with Daniel 7, extending it, expanding it, giving the one like a son of man a biography and a theology and a name. Now here is something that I find profoundly beautiful, friend. In Daniel 7, the one like a son of man comes to the Ancient of Days. He approaches the throne. He is given dominion, but his name is not given. His origin is not explained. His relationship to the Ancient of Days is not theologically developed. The vision opens a door and then leaves you standing at the threshold. The book of parables steps through that door. It says, "You want to know who this one is that Daniel saw coming with the clouds of heaven? Let me tell you, he was named before the sun was created. He has been preserved in the presence of God's might since before the world was made. He is the elect one, the Son of Man, in whom all righteousness dwells. He is the fountain of wisdom for the thirsty. He is the hope of those who are troubled of heart." The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church preserved both texts, Daniel and the Book of Parables, in the same 8:1 book canon, reading them together, allowing each one to illuminate the other. The Ge'ez word for this interpretive practice of reading texts in dialogue with each other is andamta, the same word used for the commentary tradition that cross-references Mark 14-62 with 1, Enoch 62-5. Andamta means meaning, that is supplementary, or the teaching that completes the teaching. The Ethiopian tradition built a whole interpretive methodology on the idea that the Bible's texts need each other, that no single text is complete by itself, that Daniel needs, Enoch needs, the Gospels needs the Psalms, needs the prophets. They are not separate books in a library. They are chapters in a single, unfolding revelation. And at the center of that revelation, the Son of Man, named before the sun, coming with the clouds, seated on the throne, identified with the one who walks among us. Pause and really think about that. Daniel opens the door, Enoch walks through it, and the Gospels say, "Here he is, the one who was always coming." Yes, I want to take you behind the text tonight, behind the words we have been reading, to the people who made it possible for those words to reach you. Because every time you encounter the Book of Parables, whether in a translation, in a recording like this one, or in an academic edition, you are receiving the fruit of a specific act of labor, performed by specific human beings, in specific rooms, with specific materials, in specific light. The history of the Ge'ez manuscript tradition of one Enoch is a history of extraordinary faithfulness under extraordinary pressure. The Aksumite Empire, the ancient kingdom that preceded modern Ethiopia, was a major power in the ancient world from the 1st through the 7th centuries CE. At its height, it controlled territory from the Nile Valley to the Arabian Peninsula. It had its own coinage, its own monumental architecture, the famous Aksumite obelisks or stele, its own script, Ge'ez, and its own version of Christianity. When Islam spread across the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century, and when the Arab conquest of Egypt severed the Aksumite Empire's direct link to the Coptic Christian tradition of Alexandria, the Aksumite Empire entered a period of decline. Its trade routes disrupted, its Mediterranean connections severed, but the monasteries remained. Debre Damo, perched on its cliff in Tigray, the island monasteries of Lake Tana in Amhara, Lalibela, carved into living rock in the 12th century, Tana Haik on its island in the Haiku Lake. In these monasteries, the copying continued through the decline of the Aksumite Empire, through the shift of power to the Zagwe dynasty, through the restoration of the Solomonic dynasty, in 1270 CE. Through the upheaval of the medieval centuries, the monks kept copying, not because anyone was paying them to, not because the text was commercially valuable, not because a university was funding the project, but because they believed the words were holy, and that holy words must not be lost. The first European to engage seriously with the gaze manuscript tradition of 1 Enoch was the Scottish explorer James Bruce, who traveled to Ethiopia in 1770 and brought back 3 complete Ge'ez manuscripts of 1 Enoch to Europe. Bruce's manuscripts were the source material for R. Lawrence's 1821 translation, the first English translation of 1 Enoch, published in the modern era. When R.H. Charles published his landmark 1906 translation, the one that would influence every subsequent English language scholar, he was working entirely from Ge'ez manuscripts, copied in Ethiopian monasteries over many centuries. Every word of the Book of Parables that any Western scholar has ever studied came, ultimately, from the hands of Ethiopian monks who pressed ink into vellum and lamplight and sent their work forward into a future they could not have imagined. I think about them sometimes in the deep of the night. These monks, who are mostly nameless, who sat in stone rooms that are still standing, who copied words that have now reached every continent on earth. They did not know you, friend. They did not know your language, your culture, your specific form of tiredness tonight. But they sat down and did their work anyway. And their work, across the long distance of all those centuries, has reached you. If that is you tonight, friend, if you do faithful work in places the world doesn't see, you are doing exactly what those monks were doing, pressing words forward into a future you cannot imagine, but that will one day receive them. Everything we have studied tonight in the Book of Parables has a dimension that I want to gather into focus before we close. A theology of rest. Not the theology of rest as a strategy for productivity. Not rest as recovery time before the next output, but rest as participation in the divine order. Rest as the act by which a human being enters for a few hours each night into the rhythm that was built, into the fabric of creation before the oath was spoken over it. The Book of Parables describes the dwelling place of the righteous as a resting place, Menbera Tzedekan, the resting place of the just. It describes the righteous dwelling with the Son of Man, and lying down and rising up forever and ever. It describes the fountain of wisdom, where the thirsty drink and are filled. All of these images have a quality of stillness. The righteous, in the Book of Parables, are not rewarded with endless activity. They are not given more things to accomplish. They are given rest, genuine rest, rest in the presence of the one who was named before the sun was created. This is the deepest anthropological claim of the Book of Parables. Human beings were made for rest, not merely the rest of sleep, though sleep is one of its forms, but the rest of dwelling in the presence of the one in whom all wisdom is collected. The restlessness of the world, the anxiety that keeps you awake tonight, the noise that follows you into the bedroom, the unfinished things that circle the outer edges of your consciousness. That restlessness is not the natural state of a human being. It is the condition of a creature that has been separated from the dwelling place that was prepared for it before the world was made, and the invitation of the Book of Parables, preserved in ge'ez, in lamplight, in the hands of monks who gave their lives to the practice of stillness, is this: come back, not tomorrow, not when you have resolved everything that feels unresolved, not when you have achieved the peace that you have been trying to manufacture, but now, in the imperfection of this night, in the tiredness that is real, and the worry that has not gone away, and the weight that you cannot yet fully set down, come back. The dwelling place is prepared. The Son of Man is already seated. The tide is arriving and withdrawing with the patience of something that has been doing this since before you knew you were tired. Come back and rest. The Ethiopian Hezekiah's tradition, the tradition of interior stillness, practiced in the monasteries of Lalibela and Lake Tana, has a specific phrase for this return: Melas Guzo, the return journey. Not the outward journey of spiritual achievement, but the inward journey of return. The journey back to what you were before the world had a chance to teach you that you were insufficient. The journey back to the name that was spoken over you before the stars were set in their courses. The journey that the tide takes every night, returning to the shore, arriving at the place it always was and always will be. Meles Gudzo, the return journey. That is what rest is, friend. Every night, in the silence, a return journey begins. Away from the noise and the accumulation and the performance. Back to the shore, the dark sand, the moonlight on still water, the voice that says your name in a language older than any language you have ever heard. Sleep now. The return journey is already happening. You are already on your way home. I want to take you into one of the most unique literary traditions in the world tonight, friend. A tradition you may never have heard of, but which has been shaping the theological imagination of the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church for 8 centuries. The tradition of Kwanye. Kuni is the art of sacred improvised poetry in gaze, but it is not improvised in the way that Western poetry improvisation is usually understood. It is not free verse, not stream of consciousness, not the spontaneous expression of personal feeling. It is a rigorously disciplined form of double-meaning poetry. Every line of a Kwenu poem has 2 layers of meaning. The outer layer is called wax, mol, in gaze. The surface meaning accessible to any listener. The inner layer is called goldwerk, in gaze. The concealed meaning, visible only to those who have been trained to see it. The tradition is called Semena Werk, wax and gold. A Kuni master is trained for years, sometimes a decade or more, in the schools attached to major Ethiopian monasteries. The training involves the mastery of classical Ge'ez grammar, the study of theological symbolism, the memorization of the entire Psalter, the careful study of the Book of Parables and the other Enochic texts, and the practice of composing under extreme time pressure. A Kune poem is often composed in seconds in response to a moment in the liturgy and delivered aloud before the assembly. The goal is not personal expression. The goal is theological illumination, the sudden revelation of a hidden meaning in a text or a moment of worship. that the assembly had not seen before. The wax and gold tradition was explicitly developed to honor the Tzadikin Pebuat, the hidden righteous of the Book of Parables, those whose faithfulness the visible world had not recognized or named. A cuny about the Son of Man might have a surface meaning about dawn breaking over a hilltop, and a concealed meaning about the elect one rising from his hidden dwelling to take his place on the throne of glory. The assembly would hear the surface meaning and feel the resonance of the concealed one, and something would open in them that could not be opened by direct statement. This is the genius of the Ethiopian theological tradition. It found a form of poetry that mirrors the very structure of the revelation. It was created to celebrate. The Son of Man was hidden in the presence of God and then revealed. The Q-Wine poem conceals its deepest meaning and then reveals it. Wax and gold, the outer layer protecting the inner treasure, until the one with ears to hear hears it. Now I want to offer you something, friend. Not a kune poem in the formal Ethiopian sense. I am not a Kwani master, and I would not pretend to be, but a small meditation in the spirit of wax and gold. The outer meaning? A man who plants a garden at the edge of the sea and goes to sleep before the seeds have sprouted. The inner meaning? Every act of faithfulness you perform in a world that does not reward it is a seed you have planted at the edge of the sea of eternity. You will not always see it sprout. You will fall asleep before the morning of its full flowering. But the soil is the soil of the one who was named before the sun was created, and nothing planted in that soil is ever lost. Even the seeds you planted in your most invisible seasons, in the rooms the world never entered, in the prayers you prayed alone, at hours no one else was awake. They are growing. You just cannot see them yet. Are you catching the deeper meaning? Wax and gold, the outer and the inner, the visible faithfulness and the invisible fruit. Beautiful. There is an image in 1 Enoch 48 that I want to return to one more time before the night fully deepens. And in that place, I saw the fountain of righteousness, which was inexhaustible, and around it were many fountains of wisdom, and all the thirsty drank of them and were filled with wisdom. The fountain of righteousness, inexhaustible. I want to sit with that word for just a moment. Inexhaustible. We live in a world of exhaustible things. Energy exhausts. Patience exhausts. Creativity exhausts. Kindness, stretched too far without replenishment, exhausts. We know what it feels like to reach the bottom of ourselves, to arrive at a moment when there is nothing left, to give, to produce, to feel, to offer. The word exhausted is not only about tiredness. It comes from the Latin exhaustus, drained completely. And many of us know that experience, not just as physical fatigue, but as something deeper. The sense that what we had to offer has been given, and the well is empty, and we are not sure it will fill again. But here, in 1 Enoch 48, is a fountain that is not exhaustible, a fountain of righteousness, surrounded by fountains of wisdom. And all who are thirsty, everyone, can drink and be filled, not refilled until the next draining, but filled The Greek word that R.H. Charles uses in his translation for filled with wisdom here is the same word used in the New Testament for the filling of the Holy Spirit, pimplemi, to be filled to the brim, to overflow, to have more than capacity. The Ethiopian tradition preserves this word in its liturgical sense as mela, fullness, the state of having received more than you can contain. This is the opposite of exhaustion, and the Book of Parables says, "It is available at the fountain that exists in the presence of the Son of Man." Now, I am not promising you a mystical experience tonight. I am not saying that the sleep that is coming will bring you to the fountain and fill you, but I am saying this. The fountain is real. It was there before the world was made. It is inexhaustible. And the one who named you before the sun was created knows exactly how depleted you are tonight. The rest that is coming is not just physical recovery. It is a movement toward that fountain, a step in the direction of inexhaustible supply. Let your sleep be that, friend, a step toward the fountain. The thirsty drank and were filled with wisdom. And tomorrow, in whatever that day brings, may you find yourself carrying something from a fountain that does not exhaust, something you did not have yesterday, something quieter and deeper than what the world tries to give and keeps running out of. Don't rush past that. Inexhaustible. All the thirsty drank and were filled. May that be you tonight, friend. The institutional context in which the Book of Parables was preserved in Ethiopia is inseparable from the history of the Aksumite Empire and its successor, the Solomonic dynasty. Understanding this context, friend, helps us appreciate not only how the text was preserved, but why it was treated with such consistent reverence. The Aksumite Empire reached its greatest territorial extent in the 3rd and 4th centuries CE. At its height, under King Ezana of Aksum, who converted to Christianity around 330 CE, making Ethiopia one of the first nations in the world to adopt Christianity as a state religion. The empire controlled northern Ethiopia, Eritrea, parts of Sudan, and a significant portion of the Arabian Peninsula, modern Yemen, and southern Saudi Arabia. King Ezana's conversion is confirmed by archaeological evidence. His later coins replaced the crescent and disc symbol, a Sabaean religious symbol from southern Arabia, with the cross, and the theological tradition he adopted was the tradition of Frumentius of Tyre, the Syrian-born bishop who had arrived in Aksum as a child following a shipwreck, had been educated at the royal court, had become a trusted advisor, and had eventually received episcopal ordination from Athanasius of Alexandria around 330 CE. Frumentius brought with him the Alexandrian theological tradition, including the broad canon that included texts like 1 Enoch and the Aksumite Empire, already possessing a scribal tradition in Ge'ez script that was centuries old, began the systematic translation of these texts into Ge'ez. The translation of 1 Enoch into Ge'ez, the complete canonical Ge'ez text from which every Western scholarly translation of the Book of Parables ultimately derives, was produced in this Aksumite context, in the monasteries established by the 9 saints of Syria, in the scriptoria attached to the royal court at Aksum, in the growing network of monastic communities that the new imperial Christianity was creating. Across the highlands of the Horn of Africa, the text was translated and then copied, and then taught, and then copied again, across generation after generation of scribes and monks and priests who never questioned whether it belonged in their sacred library. The Solomonic dynasty, restored to power in 1270 CE, after a period of rule by the Zagwe kings, claimed direct descent from Solomon and the Queen of Sheba through the Kebra Nagast narrative, and the Solomonic emperors including Zara Yacob, 1434 to 1468, who formally ratified the 8-1 book canon, were the most active patrons of the Ethiopian manuscript tradition. Under Solomonic patronage, the monasteries flourished, the scriptoria expanded, the manuscript collections were organized and cross-referenced and protected. The Book of Parables was not preserved, despite the institutional power of Ethiopian Christianity. It was preserved because of it, preserved by emperors who believed. The elect one of the Book of Parables was the same one their own lineage served, by monks who built their entire lives around the practice of dwelling in the presence of the Son of Man. That always moves me. Emperors and monks, obelisks and lamplight, all in service of preserving a vision that was meant to reach us tonight. Maybe that moves you too, friend. If you are still with me, friend, come back to the sea. The tide has not stopped. While we were traveling through all those centuries of copying and preserving and believing, it has been moving all this time, arriving and withdrawing, arriving and withdrawing, the rhythm of something that does not forget what it is here to do. Come back to the dark sand. Let your body sink into it again. Your hands open, your face turned toward the sky. The moon still there, slightly lower than before, having traveled its course, the way all things travel their courses, with quiet faithfulness, and no need for applause. The sea is darker now, the deep middle of the night, when even the most restless minds finally begin to slow. You may still have thoughts moving at the edges of your awareness, old thoughts, familiar thoughts, the ones that have found their way to this hour many times before. That's all right. Let them be there. You don't have to push them away. You don't have to engage them either. Just let them be there, the way the ships are there, far out on the water, visible on the horizon, but not close enough to disturb the shore. Let them drift. Your breathing is slower now. In and out. In and out. With the tide, the water is cold, but not uncomfortably cold. The cold of something real, something honest about itself, not performing warmth it does not have, just real and cool and patient. Somewhere in the deep middle of the sea, where no shore is visible in any direction, there is a place where the water is completely still. The waves have not yet arrived there. The tide is too slow to reach it. Just stillness and depth, and the reflection of the moon in water that has not been disturbed since the oath of creation was spoken over it. That is where you are going tonight, friend. Not out to the surface of things. Down into the still middle, where there are no outstanding items, no unresolved questions, no thing that should have been done differently. Just depth and dark, and the slow, patient presence of the one who was named before the sun, who knows you here, in the deep, in the quiet that is beneath all the noise of what you usually are. He knows the version of you that exists before you have managed anything today, before you have performed or produced or explained yourself. He knows the version of you that is lying here in the dark, finally still, finally just you. And he calls that version by name, the name he gave you before the sun was created. Sleep now, friend. Let the deep water hold you. Let the tide carry whatever is left of the day out to the edge of the sea's boundary, where the oath holds it, where it cannot pass, where it will wait until morning has the energy to deal with it. Tonight is not for dealing. Tonight is for the return journey. Melezguzo, the return to what you were before the world began its instruction. Still held, known by a name that predates the sun. Sleep now, the tide, arriving, withdrawing, arriving, and you, already home, already there. One of the most discussed phenomena in gospel scholarship is what 19th century German theologian Wilhelm Reda called the messianic secret of the Gospel of Mark. The pattern Reed identified was this. Throughout the Gospel of Mark, Jesus heals someone or performs a miracle and then instructs the recipient or the witnesses not to tell anyone. See that you say nothing to anyone.
Mark 1:44.
And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. Mark 5:43. And he charged them to tell no one. Mark 8:30. Why the secrecy? Why does Jesus perform public acts and then insist on their concealment? Reed's explanation was literary and theological. The secrecy motif was added by the gospel writer to explain why so few people recognized Jesus as Messiah during his earthly ministry. But there is another dimension to this question, friend, one that the Book of Parables illuminates. The Book of Parables says explicitly that the Son of Man was hidden, that the Most High preserved him in the presence of his might, and revealed him to the elect. This is a theology of hiddenness and revelation. The Son of Man is not hidden by accident. He is hidden by design, preserved until the appointed moment, revealed only to those whose eyes have been opened to see what is concealed beneath the surface. The wax and gold structure of the Koine tradition mirrors this theological pattern. The surface is ordinary, the depth is extraordinary, and only the one who has been trained to listen hears the gold beneath the wax. When Jesus instructs the healed not to speak, is he operating within the same logic as the Book of Parables? Is he the one who was hidden in the presence of God's might, and who is revealing himself gradually to those who have eyes to see, the elect of the Book of Parables, while remaining, for now, wax to those who cannot yet hear the gold? This is the interpretive move that the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has been making for 16 centuries, reading the Gospel of Mark alongside the Book of Parables, allowing the messianic secret to be illuminated by the theology of hiddenness that the Book of Parables preserved, not claiming that Mark was copying from Enoch, but recognizing that the same theological logic The hidden one revealed to the elect runs through both texts like a single thread through different tapestries. There is a personal dimension to this theology that I want to bring to you directly, friend. The hiddenness of the Son of Man in the Book of Parables is not a theological problem to be solved. It is a pastoral gift to receive, because if the divine strategy involves working through hidden things, through seeds that don't appear to be growing, through words that seem to be lost on the air, through faithfulness that the visible world doesn't measure or record, then the hidden seasons of your life are not failures of visibility. They are participation in a pattern that is as old as the divine strategy itself. You are not hidden from the world's gaze despite yourself. You may be hidden in the presence of God's might, preserved for a revelation that has not yet come, but that the Book of Parables says is as certain as the Son of Man's enthronement before the Ancient of Days. If that is you tonight, friend, if the season you are in feels hidden and unrecognized, hear this from the second parable. From the beginning the Son of Man was hidden, and the Most High preserved him in the presence of his might, and then he was revealed. Your season of hiddenness is not the last word. Before we leave the Book of Parables entirely, friend, I want to connect it briefly to the section of 1 Enoch that gives the cosmic backdrop to its theology. The astronomical book chapters 72 through 82 is the oldest section of 1 Enoch, possibly the oldest piece of Jewish astronomical writing in existence. It describes the paths of the sun and moon, the calendar of the stars, the gates through which the luminaries pass at the horizons of the earth. And it makes a claim that distinguished the Ethiopian calendar from the Roman calendar for 16 centuries. The correct calendar is based on the sun, a 364 day solar year with 4 extra days, not the lunar calendar that most Jewish communities used in the Second Temple period. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church follows the gaze calendar, the Amharic calendar, which still uses the structure, derived in part from the astronomical book of 1 Enoch. Ethiopia celebrates Christmas Jena on January 7 in the Gregorian calendar, and New Year Enkitatah in September. These are not merely cultural differences. They are theological decisions rooted in a specific cosmology, the cosmology that was preserved alongside the Book of Parables in the same 8-1 book canon. Now, why does the astronomical book matter for understanding the Book of Parables? Because the Parables theology of the pre-existent Son of Man is embedded in a cosmic framework that the astronomical book establishes. When the Book of Parables says that the Son of Man was named before the sun and the signs were created, it is using the astronomical book's detailed description of the luminaries as its reference frame, the sun and the moon and the stars, which the astronomical book describes with extraordinary specificity, were created after the Son of Man was named. The entire cosmic order that the astronomical book catalogs, all of it came after. All of it is subsequent to the naming of the one who was already there in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. This is the cosmos of the Book of Parables, a universe that was created after its purpose was already named, a universe that exists to provide the stage on which the revelation of the hidden Son of Man will occur. every star completing its course, every sun gate opening and closing in the measured rhythm of the astronomical book, all of it in service of the moment when the hidden one is revealed. And you, friend, lying on the shore of the sea at midnight, under the moon that is completing its course tonight, exactly as it was designed to do, before your name was given to you. You are part of that stage. The moon above you is one of the luminaries that the astronomical book of 1 Enoch catalogued 3 centuries before the Common Era. It is completing the same course tonight that it completed on the night the Son of Man was first named, and the one who named the Son of Man before the sun, who ordained the courses of the luminaries, who spoke the oath that holds the sea within its sandy boundaries, that one knows you are here, under this moon, on this shore, in this darkness. That is exactly the depth of darkness. It was always meant to be at this hour of your particular night. Did that make sense to you? The moon above you tonight is completing the same course it completed on the night the Son of Man was named, before the world was made. Beautiful. I want to close the educational portion of tonight with a reflection on what the Book of Parables actually does to a person who spends time with it. Not what it teaches analytically, but what it does, what it produces in a person who reads it slowly, who sits with its images, who lets its language settle into the bones. The Ethiopian Hesychast tradition, the tradition of interior stillness, holds that certain texts are not merely informational, they are formational. A text can form a person, slowly, over years of reading, in ways that analytical engagement cannot produce. The Book of Parables is, in the Ethiopian tradition, one of the great formational texts, not because it gives you a systematic theology, but because it repeatedly returns you to the same images. The Ancient of Days, the Son of Man approaching from the clouds, the righteous dwelling in garments that do not grow old, the fountain of wisdom that does not run dry, the tide of divine faithfulness, arriving and withdrawing and arriving again. These images, held over time in contemplative reading, in the Ethiopian practice of Lectio Divina, which preceded the Western monastic tradition by at least 2 centuries, work on a person the way the tide works on the shore, not by dramatic intervention, not by a single overwhelming experience, but by the cumulative, patient work of returning again and again to the same passage, the same image, the same ancient voice, and over time, something in the person changes. The edges of anxiety become less sharp. The compulsion to perform becomes less urgent. The need to be seen and recognized by the visible world becomes less consuming, not because the person has successfully argued themselves out of these things, but because they have been formed by the patient company of a text that keeps offering the same alternative. You are already seen. You are already named. You are already counted by the one whose opinion of you was formed before the sun was created. This is what contemplative prayer does, friend. This is what Lectio Divina, slow, receptive reading of Scripture, does in the person who practices it with patience. It is not primarily a technique for managing anxiety. It is a formation toward the identity that the Book of Parables says is yours. the identity of one who is clothed in garments that do not grow old, who dwells in the company of the elect one, who has drunk from the fountain of wisdom that does not run dry. The Ethiopian monks who preserved the book of parables were not primarily historians protecting a cultural artifact. They were practitioners being formed by what they preserved, and they were doing it night after night, in stone rooms, by lamplight, in the same darkness you are in right now. So let tonight be not just a listening, but a formation. Let the image of the Son of Man named before the sun settle into your bones as you sleep. Let the fountain of wisdom be active in your rest tonight. Let the dwelling place of the righteous, Men Baret Sedekan, be the image your mind rests in, as the conscious mind releases its hold and sleep begins its gentle, irresistible work. You are being formed tonight, friend. Even in your sleep, the ancient voice is working. And when morning comes, something in you will be slightly different from what it was when the day ended. Not dramatically, not visibly, but real. The way the shore is slightly different after the tide has been at it all night. Not transformed, but formed. A little smoother, a little more worn into the shape that the water always knew it would become. Sleep now, and let the formation happen. Give that some real thought. You are being formed even in your sleep. The ancient voice is still at work. Yes, there is a question beneath tonight's text that I want to bring to the surface gently. The book of parables was not written for everyone. That sounds exclusive, perhaps even harsh, but it is actually the most compassionate thing about it. Throughout the second parable and the third parable, there is a consistent distinction between two groups of people, the kings and the mighty and the exalted, and the righteous, and the holy and the elect. The first group are those who have built their lives on the currencies of power, political authority, wealth, military strength, the ability to force the world to recognize them. The second group are those who have built their lives on something less visible: faithfulness, gentleness, prayer, endurance, the kind of quiet commitment that does not announce itself on the instruments, the powerful used to measure worth. The book of parables was written for the second group, not to flatter them, not to assure them that they are better than the first group, not to provide them with a theology of resentment, but to say something precise and pastoral. The system that currently disadvantages you is not the final system. The metrics that currently undervalue you are not the ultimate metrics. The throne that currently seems occupied by those who have no interest in you is not the throne that matters most. There is another throne, and the one who sits on it has been seeing you all along. I want to read you one more passage from the second parable before we close, because I think it is the most personally addressed passage in all of 1 Enoch. Fear not the sinners, ye righteous, for again will the Lord deliver them into your hands, that ye may execute judgment upon them according to your desires. Woe to you who fulminate anathemas which cannot be reversed. Healing shall therefore be far from you on account of your sins. And fear not their revilings, and be not troubled at their contemptuous treatment. For the holy and righteous shall return, and the sinners shall be judged for their sins. and the righteous shall have dominion over them. 1 Enoch 95 to 3-5. Fear not the sinners, ye righteous. Be not troubled at their contemptuous treatment. The holy and righteous shall return. This is the voice of a tradition that was produced for people who had been treated with contempt by those who had power over them. And it is saying, in the most direct terms, you are not the final word about yourself. The contempt that has been directed at you is not the final word about you. The one who sits on the throne of the elect one, named before the sun, before the contempt, before the systems that undervalue the quiet and the faithful. That one has not changed his assessment of you. Righteousness abides over thee. Now, I want to be careful here, friend, because the book of parables is not primarily a revenge text. It is not primarily about the downfall of enemies. It is not fuel for bitterness or scorekeeping. The primary emotion of the righteous in the parables is not triumph over the fallen. It is dwelling in the light of the elect one. It is eating and lying down and rising up with the Son of Man. It is being clothed in garments of glory. The judgment of the powerful is not the point. The restoration of the righteous is the point. The judgment is the removal of what blocked the restoration. And that distinction matters enormously for how we carry this text into the days of our ordinary lives. We do not wait for the fall of the powerful. In order to have peace tonight, we receive the peace that comes from knowing that the throne exists, that it is occupied, that the one who occupies it was named for this purpose before any of the noise of the world existed, and we rest in that. That always steadies me. Fear not the sinners, ye righteous, spoken before the Sermon on the Mount, before blessed are the meek, the same comfort, the same tradition, the same ancient voice. Maybe it steadies you too, friend. The book of parables ends with dawn. Not a literal dawn, not the description of a sunrise, but with the sense of a long night ending, and something new becoming visible. The identification of Enoch with the Son of Man in chapter 71 is a dawn moment after the long journey through the parables, through the visions of judgment and the dwelling of the righteous, and the secret name and the fragrant trees. After all of it, a human being stands before the divine throne and is told, "Thou art the Son of Man, who art born unto righteousness, and righteousness abides over thee." This is the dawn of a new self-understanding, not the end of struggle, not the resolution of all difficulty, not the absence of the weight that tomorrow will bring, but the dawn of a recognition. What you are, in the deepest sense, was there before the sun was. The morning is coming, friend, and when it arrives, you will not need to construct yourself from scratch. You will simply remember what the monks of Tanahaik have been praying over these words for 1,000 years. Remember what was spoken over you before the luminaries were set in their gates. Remember that the elect one is not a figure who once visited human history and then departed. He is seated on the throne. He is not elsewhere. He is not absent. He is precisely where the book of parables says he is, in the presence of the Lord of Spirits, which is to say, everywhere present, in the dark and in the dawn, in the night that is ending, and in the morning that is coming. The astronomical book of 1 Enoch says that the sun rises through one of 12 gates at the eastern horizon, each gate corresponding to a different month. of the solar year. At this hour, the deep middle of your night, the sun is on the other side of the world, passing through whichever gate brings it toward your horizon. It is already on its way, not hurrying, not delayed, completing its course with the faithfulness of something that was told exactly what to do before the world was made. And when it arrives at your horizon, in the hours ahead, in the morning that will come, whether you are ready for it or not, it will illuminate exactly what it always illuminates: the ordinary world, your ordinary life, the room you are in, the day that is coming, with all its demands and gifts and unresolved questions. But you will see it differently. If the ancient voice has worked tonight, if the sea and the moonlight have done their patient work, if the dwelling place of the righteous has settled into your bones, alongside the words of the second parable, you will see it as someone who was clothed in garments that do not grow old, and then sent back into ordinary clothes for the day, still carrying something the day will try to take from you, and will not entirely succeed in taking. The residue of having been told, in the deep of the night, righteousness abides over thee. Sleep now, friend. The morning is on its way. It always comes, and when it does, you will be ready. But for now, there is only this: the dark, the quiet, and you held. If you are still here, friend, if the sea is still around you, if the sand is still cool beneath you, if the moon is still on its course above you, then these are the last words I want to leave with you before the silence takes over completely. Not from me, from the book of parables, the very last image of the third parable. After all the visions, after the judgment of the kings, after the fragrant trees and the oath of creation, and the secret name, after Enoch stands before the throne and is told he is the Son of Man. After all of it, the text simply says, "And he walked with the angels of God." Confer. Genesis 5:22. That is the end. He walked with the angels of God. Not a dramatic statement, not a theological formula, not a climactic pronouncement. A walk, quiet, steady, in the company of those who know the name of every star and see the full measure of every act of faithfulness, and carry the prayers of the righteous upward, like smoke rising from the morning offering. You are walking with them tonight, friend. Even in your sleep, the walk continues. Even when your conscious mind is not participating, the walk goes on. In the dark, in the quiet, in the slow arrival and withdrawal of the tide that was set in its rhythm by the oath that holds the universe together. You are part of that walk. You were always part of that walk, from before the sun was created, to this dark shore, to the morning that is coming. The walk continues. Salam, peace. Peace to you, friend. The ancient voice has spoken tonight, and it will still be speaking when the morning comes. There is a practice in the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church that has been observed every night for 1600 years without interruption. The night office, called in Ge'ez the Seyatat Lalit, the hours of the night. It is the sequence of prayers and psalms and readings that the monastic communities perform, beginning at midnight and continuing through to dawn. The monks of Debre Damo the communities of the Lake Tana Islands, the priests of the rock churches of Lalibela. Every night, as the rest of the world sleeps, they are awake, praying through the Book of Psalms, chanting the hymns of the Gaze musical tradition, reading from the scriptures of the 8-1 book canon. And among the texts that are read in the night office is one Enoch, including the Book of Parables. So tonight, friend, at this very hour, somewhere in the highlands of Tigray, or the Lake District of Amhara, or the carved stone churches of Lasta, a monk is awake. He has been awake for hours, and he is reading the same words we have been reading tonight. The same Walda Sab, the same Ancient of Days, the same Elect One who was named before the sun. He is not doing it as an academic exercise. He is not doing it for an audience. He is doing it because he has taken a vow to hold these words in active remembrance. While the rest of the world is in passive sleep, he is keeping the vigil so that the words do not go unspoken for even a single night in all the long centuries of their preservation. This is what it means to be the custodian of the ancient voice. Not merely to read it occasionally and appreciate it intellectually, but to show up for it in the dark, night after night, year after year, decade after decade, holding it, tending it, the way a keeper tends a fire that must not go out, because fire that goes out is much harder to rekindle than fire that was never allowed to dim. Now, you are not a monk. You have not taken a vow to pray through the night, and tonight your calling is not to keep the vigil, but to rest in the company of those who do. The monk is awake so that you can sleep. He is praying the words tonight so that the words exist in the world, while you receive the rest that the words make possible. This is the communion of the saints in its most practical, most grounded form, a community spread across time and geography, holding the thread so that no one has to hold it alone, so that the night office never goes unperformed, so that the ancient voice never falls entirely silent. You are part of that community tonight, friend. Not because you have memorized the liturgy, not because you know the words in Diez, but because you are here, in the dark, with these words, in this hour, and that places you in the long line of all those who have received this tradition, from those who carried it before them, from Enoch to the compiler of the parables, to the Aksumite translators, to the 9 saints of Syria, to the monks of 16 centuries, to the scholars who made the Ge'ez legible to the world, to tonight, to you. The thread has reached you. Carry it gently, into sleep, into the morning, into whatever tomorrow asks of you, and know that somewhere tonight, a monk is awake in the highlands of Ethiopia, reading the same words by lamplight, keeping the vigil so that the fire does not go out. You are not alone in this night. You never were. Selam, peace. I want to close with a single theological thread that runs through everything we have studied tonight. The thread of being named. In 1 Enoch 48, the Son of Man is named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits before the sun and the stars were created. In 1 Enoch 69, the creation itself is held together by an oath, a name spoken at the moment. The cosmos was called into existence In 1 Enoch 71, Enoch is addressed by the angel with a statement of identity. Thou art the Son of Man, who art born unto righteousness. In the astronomical book of 1 Enoch, the stars complete their courses because he calls them by their names and they answer him. The entire theological world of the book of parables is a world organized around naming, around the claim that identity is not self-constructed, not achieved, not performed, not accumulated through years of sufficient effort. Identity in the theology of the parables is spoken from outside, from a source that precedes the one who is named, from a voice that was speaking names before there were beings to receive them. No, there is a deep pastoral need in the human heart that this theology addresses directly. Most of us have experienced what it is like to have our names spoken by others in ways that diminished us. Names from childhood that stayed too long. Labels from failure that became identities. Descriptions from people with authority over us that we eventually began to believe because they were repeated often enough. These are the names that the world gives. And the book of parables says they are not the final names. They are not even the first names. The first name, the original name, the name that was spoken over you in the presence of the Lord of Spirits before the sun was created, that name is not accessible to those who diminished you. It is not subject to revision by those who had power over you in rooms you have since left. It is not dependent on whether you remember it or whether you feel it tonight or whether you can access it in the tiredness of this particular hour. It simply is. The way the oath is, the way the tide is, the way the stars are, completing their courses, because he called them by their names. And they answered, You were named before the noise of the world began, and that name is still yours tonight, in the dark, on the shore, under the moon, that is completing its appointed course, with the tide arriving and withdrawing in the rhythm of the oath that has always held the boundary of the sea. Your name is still yours. The one who spoke it has not changed his mind about you. Not tonight. Not ever. Rest in that, friend, all the way down into sleep, all the way into the morning that will come exactly when it was meant to come, with your name still intact, still spoken, still yours. Walda Sab, the name is still being spoken in the Highlands and on the shore, and in the deep of the sea, and in the silence that is beneath all the sounds of your night. The name is still there, and so are you. Salam.